Geoinformation is a really important part of our data mix. I guess really the essence is that we recognise that everything and everyone is somewhere. And as we consider the big data agenda, we need to recognise that location forms a significant part of that mix of information. The acquisition of the weather company by IBM is really quite a significant thing for us. It allows us to integrate weather information, business information, and also information from the Internet of Things to help us understand the different types of data and being able to converge it to give us better business insight. Ultimately, analytics isn't about the destination, but rather the ability to change working practice, gives us the ability to modify supply chains, optimize industry, and therefore weather has a major part to play in all that conversation. The issue of using data for weather forecasting, or using big data for weather forecasting, is not such that the data helps with the weather forecasting, but rather that the data is obtained from multiple devices around the world, from weather stations, from devices, which enable us to have a complete picture of the weather, both by way of location and also by altitude. Well, data from weather can be used, for example, for the insurance sector. It can be used for financial services, for example, understanding the impact of the volatility of assets and liabilities. It can be used in the retail sector to help organisations understand the stock which is sold at a particular time of the year. For example, also to think about what you might put inside a vending machine, which is likely to sell maybe in a hot period in a particular location compared to a cold part of the year. IBM take information from multiple external sources, for example financial data, but also we integrate that with the data which is available from organisations themselves. So the real power of the insight comes from combining the internal and external data, really to give us the insight which helps organisations change the way they operate. The idea of insight as a service means that organisations are able to obtain information pretty well from capabilities which are not on their premises. The ability to obtain insight and analytics from the cloud, for example, that enables them to take information in a much more flexible way, which applies more to a different way of operating their business. It provides information to executives and all levels of the organisation simply to enable them to have more availability to the analytics available to them. Location is a critical element of data. It gives us insight into where things are and where people are. But it's only by converging that with other data, for example, weather data, business data, that we really start seeing the energy released from the combination of the data. So it's really a question of the parts put together becoming, giving a much greater holistic picture. The topic of IoT and cloud is relevant insofar as that the Internet of Things is really the source of multiple elements of unstructured data, which when contributed and put together with organisational structured data gives us a much holistic picture. The Internet of Data, of course, comprises maybe 80% of all available information. It's coming from video, it's coming from text, it's coming from verbal information, and many times we call it the dark information. So the Internet of Things really is the vehicle by which all this new available data all comes together and which collectively creates a holistic picture. one of the interesting additional pieces which will be relevant in the geospatial environment is really the whole aspect of social media. Social media has been important in that it helps us to understand the sentiment of the consumer or the citizen about particular topics. For example, IBM have a relationship with Twitter, and we are able to analyse the Twitter feeds around particular topics and around particular times. But when we start putting a location element into that mix, it helps us understand the regional variation between Twitter sentiment. So therefore location, social media and time become key attributes in terms of a much deeper insight to any particular topic. Well, social media, of course, is unstructured by nature, but there are many tools which are currently available which help organisations analyse the unstructured information and help us to have a better insight. One of the key challenges really is the volume of information which is emerging, measured in terabytes of information per day. These amounts of data are at a level which are just becoming too big for on-premise capability, and therefore the cloud becomes a really critical element in terms of how that information is stored and how it's analysed. The question really is whether there will be one single Internet of Things and whether all information will be ubiquitous and everyone will have access to it. I don't think that will happen. I think the individual and organisations and perhaps governments also will place certain restrictions on the amount of information which is commonly available. Organisations already tend to put security levels around the level of information which is available to their employees. We talk in terms of analytics becoming democratised, and the democratisation of information is one of the big ethical questions, I think, of the big data environment going forward. I think it's going to be a really challenging time going forward. As we think about geolocation becoming critical to all business decisions, the issue becomes one of how prepared are we as individuals and as organisations to share information about where we are all the time. What I'm seeing is that different age groups have different attitudes towards sharing location information. I see, for example, that my children are much more relaxed in terms of sharing location information about themselves, provided that they actually receive a trade-off. For example, where they can buy coffee at a discount. And I think the challenge really for us is to look at the geo world not through our eyes, but rather to look through the eyes of people who are 18, 20, 25, because the reality is it's their world going forward and we have to be able to respond to that world.